I mean, and just from someone who interviews people all day, there's a definite difference from interviewing reality stars versus like you became famous for a skill or a career. There's 100% a difference, which is a whole nother conversation.
There's a whole other conversation, yeah.
For another time. I mean, so have you heard, so since you've written this book, like so you heard from Tyra?
I love how you asked that question. So you've heard from Tyra question. I've not heard from her, actually. Yeah, I've not heard from her. I know she's aware of the book. There have been stories where a source close to her has said, we all know what the sources usually are. But I've not heard from her. But if I had to kind of say, you know, I guess speak to her to an extent, you know, I don't know if she's read the book or not. I assume maybe, you know, a lot of people said, oh, she's read it. But I think, and you've read the story, I think this is, you know, Keisha Cash, again, it is not her, but it's inspired by her. Even with Keisha, I wanted her as a character to have this 360 portrait of a woman who is a diamond, but a flawed diamond, created in a pressure cooker of a career, being a woman in an industry run by men, and being a Black woman in an industry that's run predominantly by white men, and how and what that took to kind of stand up and become who she was. And ultimately, I wanted that 360 portrait, and I wanted people to feel her vulnerability. I wanted people to feel empathy for her at times, you know, in the book, and go, oh, wow, and really question, you know, a little bit where she may have come from. But ultimately, I just didn't want anyone to say she was like a textbook villain, and you even question, is she even the antagonist in the piece or not? I'll let the readers decide that without spoiling anything. But, you know, I've just read pieces and seen, you know, films where it's just clear this antagonist is blah. I don't want to say who or what, but I've heard criticisms where we're like, well, this person is just the villain for villain's sake. You know, we never learn why. And I think it's just important to kind of explore an individual. And remember, this is told through a very specific POV. This book is written in third person limited from Pablo's POV. And, you know, we could easily flip this book around. It's kind of like The Wizard of Oz. And when then they did Wicked on Broadway, at the act break, they flip it around and we see it from a different POV, which is Elphaba, which is like the Wicked Witch. And we realize she's not really wicked, you know? So you could flip this around any which way you want. But I think it's important to just explore characters. And that's what I was doing.
Did you hear from anyone else, like Janice Dickinson, Nigel, anyone associated with the show?
No, well, Nigel said, you know, congrats on the book, blah, blah, blah. You know, Miss J was actually the first person I told about the book. And it was probably a little unfair of me the way I did it as well. I told him early this spring, which was the day my book announced. I had an exclusive in Variety that launched the announcement of the book, and that story went around the world because Variety released it. And so I called Miss J. He was like laying in bed. It was like a half hour before the story broke. And my website was already up, public, but you know, people wouldn't know to look at it. So I said, hey, he was like, yeah, what's up? Da, 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 da. I'm like, go to my website. He's like, why? So he went to my website and he thought it was a joke. He was like, oh, is this a joke because Andre did his book with Anna Wintour? I was like, well, no, there's gonna be a big Variety piece coming out in about 30 minutes. And he like gagged. Then he went through my website, and then there's that trailer. I shot a 1-minute trailer, which with the very talented Nicole Galicia, this actress who portrays Keisha Cash. And he like, I just heard him gasp through the whole website. So he said to me, he basically like cursed me out, very Miss J style, like, why didn't you tell me? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, you should have told me. And I was like, okay, honestly, Miss J, if I told you, telling you is like putting out a mass email. Like Miss J can't hold water. She can't hold water. So I told him that. I'm like, Miss J, you can't keep your mouth closed. So I couldn't tell you before now. So he took offense to that, but I'm like, but you know it's true. And he was like, well, whatever. You know, it was kind of funny.
what, because I would imagine like you've heard from just, or even like, you know, fans or comments. Like, I mean, I assume that most people that read this book are trying to figure out what's real and what's not real, but most people just err on the side, I would assume, of assuming like everything's real.